который сейчас находится в России. Мы сейчас продолжаем на следующую сессию с тремя докладами на разных темах. We're pleased to continue now with another miscellaneous session. My name is Keenan Reesor, and Dr. Jackson has asked me to chair this session. We'll hear first from Dr. Josh Bedford, whom I'll introduce presently. Dr. Bedford is an assistant professor of musicology at Middle Tennessee State University. He wrote his dissertation on Soviet opera and aesthetics under Stalin, and has recently been focusing on laughter in opera. Dr. Bedford is an internationally active presenter and also contributed an essay on Cherubim's harmony to a collection published by Religion. The title of his paper today is Gogol's Devils and Gogol's Laughter in Rimsky-Korsakov's Christmas Eve and Shostakovich and Notes. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to jump right in as long as I have. Okay. So, the demonic permeates nearly all of Gogol's works, whether they be physical representations of devils, witches, sorcerers, or if they exist as ubiquitous presence within the framework of the plot or the setting. Gogol's devils can be traced back to a range of sources, including German Romanticism, Ukrainian folklore, Orthodox traditions, and the Vertep, among many others. The variety of source material has allowed for a collection of devil types that Vasily Gipius divided into two predominant groups: the amusing and terrifying. For instance, the devil in Noche Rождество is a farcical and exaggeratedly comic depiction taken from the nativity play in folk imagination. The terrifying demon can be found in the character of Vasavyuk from Вечер накануне Ivana Kupala, or Katerina's father in Strashnaya Miest. The demonic, as an undergirding or ubiquitous power, existed predominantly within the Petersburg tales, often altering or distorting characters' experiences. The final sentence of Nevsky Prospect clearly illustrates this. Quote, "The devil himself lights the lamps only so as to show everything not as it really looks." Lastly, it was Dmitry Chishovsky writing about Gogol's play Shinel, who succinctly described the devil as the main character in all of Gogol's works, noting that even when the devil is physically absent, its presence can be felt by the characters or narrators mentioning, summoning, or conjuring up its image. If the devil is omnipresent in Gogol's works, then the same case should or could be made for operatic adaptations of his stories. Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov's Rождество was met initially with indifference for his mythologization of the original story in 1895, but praise eventually arrived throughout the 20th century for that mythologization, namely his ability to combine the natural and supernatural worlds. He achieved this combination using melodies and harmonies predominantly drawn from tritones and the octatonic scale to symbolize the devil and the ongoing influences of unclean forces at work in the opera, and then diatonic melodies and harmonies for the human world. For Boris Asafiev, the contrast in musical languages signified a game of elements and a, quote, struggle between light and dark powers. Like Noche, Shostakovich's Nos also features a convergence of contrasting worlds. For Alla Bogdanova, these two worlds consisted of the fantastic and realistic, but not for any cosmic confrontation. Instead, this was the product of Shostakovich's approach to satire. Analyzing the musical structure of the work from a different point of view, Levana Kopyan finds a similar dualistic construction of the inner subjective world marked by elaborate and fully developed polyphonic music forms, and the external world portrayed by exaggeratedly mechanistic ostinato and grotesque distortions of traditional genre paradigms. While the demonic is readily accessible in Rimsky-Korsakov's opera, it is conspicuously absent from Shostakovich's. Instead, the fantastical or supernatural elements in Nos seem part of larger aesthetic projects. Yet I want to explore the possible possible parallel of the demonic between these two operas as they exist in the understanding of the demonic in the literary originals. To do this, I'm going to focus primarily on demonic laughter because it relates to two critical parts of Gogol's studies and creates an opportunity to find parallels not only between the two operas, but the stories from which they are adapted and with other operas that contain demonic laughter. The devil's laughter can be described much like Gogol's development of amusing and terrifying devil types, but it is always at the expense of a human character. It is mocking laughter that can result, expresses the power of the demonic. In his essay, Demonic Laughter in 19th Century Slavic Literature, Dejan Ajdačić explained, quote, "The demon's laughter does not express benevolence, but most likely victory over the human world," end quote. Thus, the result could be something catastrophic, like the devilish laughter that thundered on all sides when Petro sealed his pact with the devil in Večer nakaninia Ivana Kupala. Or it could be more amusing as the devil leads man astray through a series of jokes and pranks, like in Nunch. Mocking laughter and its ties to the demonic or supernatural has a rich tradition in 19th century opera as well. For example, there is the spectral laughter of the Dutchman's crew in Der Vliegende Hollander, Kundry's laughter motif in Parsifal, Mephistopheles in all of his incarnations who laughs, but I'm thinking predominantly about Gounod's Faust, and then especially Carl Maria von Weber's Der Freischütz. Der Freischütz is a particularly special case for comparison because of Simon Karlinski's proposal that this opera not only contributed to the tragic plot of Večer nakaninia Ivana Kupala from Gogol's Die Kranke Tales, but also to the operatic qualities of all the Die Kranke Tales. Additionally, Weber's use of mocking laughter in Der Freischütz serves as a predecessor to Rimsky-Korsakov's use of this laughter type in Notch. So, Der Freischütz. In the first act of Der Freischütz, Max gets ridiculed for his insufficient shooting skill by Killian and a group of peasant women in the piece Schau der Herr mich als König. During the chorus, the sopranos laugh on an ostinato pattern of eighth notes that begin with one measure of laughter on the pitch G and then laughing in VC on G and A, creating a major second sonority for four measures. Overall, in this example, I know I don't have it up there, it's okay. I'm going to show you another one, you'll get to see it. In this particular example, the overall harmonic character of laughter is diatonic and fails to create any sense of the demonic in this mockery. It's just mocking someone human to human in this instance. However, the laughter returns in the famous Wolfsglen scene, now performed only by the orchestra. In this part of the melodrama, Max gathers the courage to continue descending in the glen, but before he can finish singing, the orchestra begins to mock Max with the same laughter from the previous act. This time, the violins begin on E flat, co-opting his heroic melody there in an ostinato pattern of eighth notes for one measure and then adding the major second above, just like they did in Act 1. The bassoon chimes in with the two eighth note motive from Act 1, where they were asking, wieder fragig, in this minor third interval, but now the bassoon is singing it and alternating from the pitches A flat to C flat on the first and second pair of each measure. Along with the laughing violins, this creates a second position F half diminished chord that then finishes with an A flat fully diminished chord. Ooh, there we go. The presence of the tritone symbolizes the shift from human mockery to demonic, and the double tritones of the final chord prepare for Max's supernatural encounters and the fateful meeting with Samuel later in the melodrama. I'll just play this section. You've heard it before, but for years. Mocking laughter in Rimsky-Korsakov's similarly includes a laughing episode of carolers ridiculing the protagonist of the opera of Kuznets. The episode follows a comparable pattern, starting with a single-pitched laugh for nearly a full measure that grows with the addition of a major second above. Rimsky-Korsakov, however, expands the laughing sonority by including two more voices, separated by the interval of a major second, transposed up a fourth from the preceding pitches sung by the altos. Are you able to see that somewhat, if it's small? His expansion of the laughing voices provides opportunity to abandon the static pitches and move voices by whole or half step to join with the harmonic movement of the orchestra. For example, the series of chords used include an E-flat minor seventh chord in second position that lead to a root position A-flat seventh chord that prepares an expected resolution to D-flat. However, Rimsky-Korsakov moves from the A-flat to a D major seventh chord with an added flat ninth, thus arriving at the final sonority by a leap of a tritone in the bass, and additionally adding in some more tritone, if you will. So you're probably wondering, this was human-to-human interaction, what are the tritones doing there, right? The presence of tritones then indicate perhaps the presence of the demonic in this opera based on the musical material from the opening and everything leading up to this moment that's been associated with the devil, the tritones, the octosonic scale, et cetera, et cetera. But moreover, this particular laughing episode has connections to the demonic as Gogol presented it in the story. At one point, Vakula is briefly haunted by a, quote, evil spirit that carried before him the laughing image of Oksana, saying mockingly, get the tsaritsa slippers for me, blacksmith, and I'll marry you, which she sang right before that laughing episode. In Mikhail Weisskopf's analysis of the demonic in Gogol's Dikanka Tales, this is a moment in which mocking laughter precipitates a fantastical journey. In the opera, this indeed happens. Immediately after the laughing ends, Vakula demonstratively bids farewell to Oksana in a chromatically inflected melodic phrase, replete with a couple of tritones. And then he goes on to have his interaction with the devil, and then he's going to win that interaction and fly on the devil's back to go get the tsaritsa slippers. In Noche, the devil is clearly marked by the presence of tritone intervals and octatonic scales when he is present on the stage, but he's also manifested through these same intervals when he is not in the diegesis. The demonic in Shostakovich's Nos exists in this way as well because there's no specific character that functions as the devil in the story or the opera. Yet the question remains whether or not Shostakovich relies on maybe similar configurations in order to convey that demonic, or whether or not he really is even concerned with it, right? So in her essay, Gogol's Nose or the Devil in the Works, Anne Schuchman explores the variety of ways that the demonic presents itself in the story through references to supernatural phenomena by characters or the narrator, how Gogol purposely obscures the narration through elements of the setting, for example, the use of fog, which abruptly cuts the story off and mysteriously hides events, or through the direct reference to the devil by characters in the story. Ultimately, she concludes that it is impossible to find a single source of the demonic in Nos because of the various obfuscations and simultaneous ubiquity of it. He writes, quote, the point of the story lies in its unfolding of a bundle of potential and unfulfilled meaning. The only consistency lies in its inconsistency, end quote. Like the story, Shostakovich's opera is full of references to the devil or the demonic through obfuscation of musical material, the rapid shifts of musical genres from galops to marches to romances, or the absence of traditional arias or recitatives. The scenes, as Alexander Tumanov describes, tend to emerge from nothing, build into some grand climax, and then recede or fade away back into that nothingness, imitating the murky presence of the fog that upsets the standard linear flow of the plot. Furthermore, there are many references to the devil made by plenty of the over 70 characters Shostakovich wrote into the opera. I want to focus, however, on the references to the devil made by one of the primary characters, Kovalyov, collegiate assessor. In the fourth scene, set in the Kazan Cathedral, Kovalyov anxiously awaits an opportunity to meet with his nose, since it has disappeared from his face. Before confronting his nose, though, he speaks to himself, wondering how he can approach the nose, and concludes the devil knows how to go about it. On the phrase, the first phrase of that statement, "Chort Yavo znayet," Shostakovich adjusts his melodic figure from constant movement up and down to a static recitation on the pitch D for each syllable, which I have highlighted there. The abrupt shift is brief, but noticeable nonetheless, because Kovalyov's melodies consistently move about. In the next scene, in the next scene, Kovalyov enters a newspaper shop hoping to place a reward ad for the successful return of his nose. Obviously, at this request, the clerk and the porters all laugh at him. In exasperated frustration, Kovalyov shouts, "The devil wanted to make fun of me." Instead of recitation on any single pitch in this phrase, Kovalyov sings the pitch again, this time an octave higher and only on the word short. Although both instances are brief, this pitch is starting to hold some significance in relation to the devil, and other instances await in the most fantastical scene of them all, the final scene that I want to show you from Act 3, Scene 7, on the outskirts of St. Petersburg, which is one of the scenes from in the opera that Shostakovich and his libretto team of Yevgeny Zamyatin, Georgy Yonin, and Alexander Price developed. It's not from the original story. It is a tour de force that demonstrates Shostakovich's entire approach to the opera within the span of one 15-minute scene. It shifts between a variety of characters who all represent their own individuality, only to slowly be consumed themselves by the sheer number of people on the stage and turned into a giant mechanical and inhuman mob. Various musical genres emerged throughout the accumulation of characters, beginning with the frenetic attempts of the district constable to corral his men and focus them on the task of capturing the nose. Strangely, they shift to intoning a melancholic liturgical song before new individuals emerge on stage. Here, a family discusses the perils of traveling late at night, while some other policemen gossip about the unclean forces that seem to haunt the area. As the policemen continue, two friends, Ivan Ivanovich and Pyotr Fyodorovich, enter making small talk until Pyotr begins laughing at Ivan Ivanovich's bum leg. It all continues, creating this polyphony of voices until the bagel vendor arrives, grabbing the attention of the policemen, who gather around her and begin to laugh repetitively as they attack her. The instances of laughter in the scene reveal some striking connections to Kovalyov's reference to the devil in scenes 4 and 5. First, Ivan Ivanovich and Pyotr Fyodorovich their laughter begins on or around the demonically tinged pitch of D. Ivan Ivanovich his bursts of laughter in particular outline a D diminished triad until he reaches the end. So there's a tritone reference for us that we haven't had yet. The policeman and the bagel vendor take this pitch to frightening extremes, however. As the policemen surround the bagel vendor, they begin laughing in very cruel, inhumane, and mechanical ostinato eighth-note rhythms on the pitch E. And you see that laughter there on the third measure. Okay, so that's the start of it. Meanwhile, the vendor begins to cry out with a falling tritone gesture from G sharp to D. There's our tritone yet again. The rest of the policemen start to join in, beginning their mechanical ostinato laughter on D until they move by whole step or half step to create a cluster. And big, massive cluster there. The entire episode lasts for approximately 35 measures until the nose appears. From there, the mob's attention turns toward capturing the nose, who is eventually caught and beaten down back to size. Now I'm going to play a portion of this for you, it's just going to be this massive sound at some point, right? You're not going to be able to pick out all the different laughter. One thing I will point out, though, is that when some of the policemen laugh faster than this eighth note, they can change pitch. When they laugh in this mechanical fashion, it's on that pitch. So the all of a sudden you're going to hear a story from the nose, telling them to stop, and then everyone's going to turn and start chasing the nose next. So the mob has been formed essentially through this particular moment. It's been formed and set around that particular pitch, which I find quite interesting. So the scene represents a portion of the of an underlying theme of the opera, which, according to the Jacobian, is the, quote, theme of unreasoning cruelty, ruthlessness, and bloodthirstiness as presented from a displaced absurdist angle, end quote. Svetlana Lashenko adds to Jacobian's claim in her excellent article on laughter in Shostakovich's nose by substituting laughter for the, quote, displaced absurdist angle. However, she disagrees that the laughter of the absurd is entirely at work here in this opera. Instead, she argues for a more Gogolian style of laughter, or the ritual reed carnivalesque laughter that Bakhtin describes and also ascribes to Gogol. Interestingly, though, Lashenko also considered the possibility of devilish laughter in Nose, but abandoned the thought because the only supernatural character in the story, the title character, the Nose, indeed does not laugh at all in the opera. I think we can find a potential reading of demonic laughter in Nose, though, or the supernatural laughter, if you will, if compared to other operatic representations of the demonic, like the Freischütz or Rimsky-Korsakov's Noche, perhaps. However, but this is but one reading of the demonic in Notes, and if we follow what Anne Schukman's advice has been, no single interpretation exists. Quote, unless, that is, the story is an iconic sign of the world where the devil holds sway, end quote. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bedford, for that paper